One of the things I always wonder about when I see a book, no matter what it is how it got its title. You know, sometimes you look at a book and it has a title and you go, oh, how did it come? So one of the things I always start with is how this title came about. And it's really quite a fun type sort of story. And what happened is I work at an online university. And when you're in an online university, everybody lives in a different part of the country because you're online. You don't all have to be having coffee at the, and be at the water cooler. So about 4 times a year, the administration would bring all of us together so that we could have meetings because we're all separate. So you want to talk about curriculum and emotions and whatever, but they brought us together and it was very intense. We had meetings from early in the morning till maybe 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and everybody was exhausted. But at night, you could either be spent and go to your hotel room and order room service, or you could eat with a friend or whatever. So several months after my husband passed away, when I started to rejoin the meetings, I had a friend, a colleague, who said, let's have dinner. And he said, I'd like to take you to dinner and we can talk. Now, keep in mind, this is a very spiritual, kind, thoughtful, lovely human being. And so we went to dinner a few times and he was very good about me getting through this process. After about 1.5 years, after my husband passed away, he did call before we went to one of these meetings and he said, I'd like to take you to dinner. I said, great, thank you. And to be honest, he had a girlfriend in a committed relationship, so that part of it wasn't, there's always your radar is on, whoa. So in any case, we go to dinner and he said, I do want to discuss something with you, something important. And I said, okay, for sure. And so he said, I want to talk to you about 2 things that I think will help you. And I said, okay. And he took me to this lovely French bistro, in Cincinnati, where they have the nice French music in the background and the tablecloths are lovely and it's set up beautifully and we're opposite each other. And I said, okay. And just so you know, not everybody eats meat today. Some people, pescatarians, vegetarian, there's all these things. But we eat meat. Not all the time. I mostly eat fish and chicken, as does he. But when we're together, a lot of times we'll eat meat. There's a reason I'm telling you this. So we go to the restaurant, and also what we like to do is we share. Because I'm somebody, when you go to a restaurant and they give you an entree and it's a big plate of food, that's really all you can eat. But if you share food, you can have several courses. So I can have an appetizer, part of it, I can have a salad, I can have meats, I can have dessert. So we're sharing, and we start with the appetizer. And he says to me, Arlene, I've been thinking about this, and I really think that it might be time for you to move on. And I'm trying to be polite here. So I said, oh. And you might also think about, the second thing I want to discuss with you is moving out of your house, because it's a larger house and it's a lot of work. It's not a new house and it's expensive, and you might want to move out of your house. Now, as a sidebar, let me share that, and it's out of the goodness of people's hearts, when they say, it might be time for you to move on, or it might be time for you to move to a smaller place. Well, in actuality, no widow wants to hear that. We know when it's time to move on, and if not, never. But you have to be polite. So he says this about moving on, and moving out of my home. And I say, thank you. And what he doesn't understand is that when somebody says this to a widow, again, from the goodness of their heart, they mean well. If you remember Linda Blair in The Exorcist and her head goes spinning, that's what you want to do to somebody when they start saying that to you. You want to twist their head around because they're telling you something you don't want to hear. So we have our appetizer. I've said thank you, said it. Then the salad comes. But when the salad comes, they start putting out all the silverware that's appropriate for your meal. So you got the salad fork, you may have a fish fork, you have a meat fork, then you have a knife, a butter knife, a steak knife, a spoon for desserts. It's a whole thing. And so they bring the second course with the silverware and the salad, and we share the salad. And he said, I'm going to go back to what I wanted to discuss with you. Starts again with the moving on and the selling your house. And so I say, again, thank you. And this is not going well for me. Well, they bring the meat, and he cuts it, and we each share our meat. We have our little veggies. And he says, so let's talk about how you can move on. And with that, I lost all my kindness. It just went away. I'm like baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. And so the steak knife, if you've been to a good steak restaurant, you got it, is a wooden handle with the serrated edge. This is all true. And I look at the knife and I look at him, lovely man, and I pick up the knife and I go, let me explain something to you. If you tell me one more time to move on, because for me, moving on would be leaving my husband someplace, and I still haven't done that. So I have no desire to leave my husband. So I pick up the knife and I say, if you'd say it one more time, because you said it 3 times, I am going to lunge across the table and knife you with this. True story. So he's very quiet. And now you know how long a minute is in silence when nobody's speaking?
Forever.
I know. I'm sitting there, I go, oh, what do I do? And he just looks at me, and after a minute of dead silence, he says, well, maybe, Arlene, you can never move on, but I'll bet you can move
Forward.
Hence the title. So when he said that, it was like a bolt of lightning hit me in the head, because it was like, oh, I know how to move forward. I've done that my whole life. Moving on, not so much. Moving forward. Yeah. And you don't want to leave your house frequently because it's, aside from it's where you and your spouse lived, maybe raised children, maybe had gatherings, aside from that, it's really your life. As someone explained to me, it's not just your memories, it's your life. So I didn't even go there, but we got the title. And the irony is, when I sent my first draft of this to the editor, she just started calling it Moving Forward, and I never put a title on it. And then when I sent it to the business editor, she started calling it Moving Forward. So I said, well, that must be it. But we couldn't just put moving forward because you don't know what you're moving forward from. It's a term used many places. So we put the widow's journey so they know who might want to read this. So that's my story of how the title came about, how kind and wonderful people are. And I have to say, in my world, my husband died a decade ago this October, but I will tell you that people are remarkable. There are people in this room who've been with me before, during, and after, and they are remarkable. So let me tell you what it's like. If I can find my spots. The best way I can describe the process of moving forward after losing someone so close to you is by comparing the process to a train ride. Life moves forward from the last compartment to the first. Eventually, As you progress in life, you slowly move from one to the next, eventually shutting the door of the compartment behind you and moving into the next one until it's time to move forward again. That moving forward, letting go of one door and stretching for the next one, often shakes every part of you. If you've ever been on a train and you go from one car to another, you know, there's like a little platform, and you stand there holding on because you're letting go and you're going, oh, that's what this is like. So even though sometimes it may feel as if you've moved from one compartment to another without even having noticed you moved, mostly you are trembling across the unknown as a widow. When I lost the love of my life, I was keenly aware of every single movement, often as if it were in slow motion. I chose to open the door, reach for the next compartment, still seeing the compartments behind me, but moving forward to the next one on my own. I find comfort in knowing I can always look back to see and remember everything inside of them, while I also know there is so much more to do in the one I'm in now. And that's sort of how I look at it. It's interesting because I believe that this book actually has a life of its own. And the reason I say that is I had no plan on writing this book. And 3 women who did not know each other, one lived in Miami, one in Lauderdale, and one in Cincinnati. After 3 years, these 3 women didn't know each other, all said to me, I'll never forget it, at different months, well, Arlene, what's your plan for next year? And I said, what do you mean, what's my plan? I don't know what you're talking about. They said, you have a process and you should write about it. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a process. And they said, each one said, yeah, what'd you do the first year after Howard died? I said, well, I had to fix things. Because, you know, when you have a roof that leaks, you can't get a new roof when someone's in a sick bed because they're going to be banging on his head with a roof. That wouldn't work. And if you, like in Florida, we have termites, and if you have to get your house tented, I can't move them out for the 2 or 3 days because it's poison that they put in it. And that went on the whole first year. And then they said, well, what'd you do in year 2? I said, everything that had to do with paper. I had to do a will, I had to get the house transferred, I had to go to banks, all kinds of things. But they all had to do with paper. And they said, what'd you do in year 3? And I said, well, actually, I went upstairs and got rid of old furniture and things that we weren't going to use anymore, and photographs. Well, there was such a thing as pictures before the camera. Remember those? You had an Instamatic, you might have had a Polaroid, you might have had fancy cameras, but you had pictures. I had, because I knew my husband half a century, 7,600 pictures.
Wow.
I know. So, and I at least had them in albums and dated because I'm very organized, but I still had 7. So I said, so finally I got rid of, and I only had 3,100 pictures, which I took to a place to get scanned because I was not going to stand at my computer and scan. First of all, I don't even know what I'm doing. So that was year 3. And so they said, and what's in year 4? And I said, well, actually the outside. And then they said, you should write about this because we know people and they get stuck and they don't know how to move forward, and you. I said, thank you. No way was I writing anything. At the end of the 4th year, I go to my hairdresser because I get my hair dyed. I'm old and I get my hair dyed every month. So, and when you have dye on your head for 32 minutes, you talk to your hairdresser. And so I tell him this whole story, and he said to me, his name is Guy, and Guy said, you know, Arlene, they're right. I have other clients, and they actually, they get stuck. They don't know how to move forward. I said, okay, thank you, goodbye. I was not still doing it. At the end of year 5, he said to me again, he goes, you know, I've been thinking about it, and not only do I think you should write something, But I have 2 clients, and one happens to be Christian and one happens to be Jewish. There's a reason I'm telling you this. I have 2 clients, and they're like you. They lost their spouses, they stayed in their houses, they fixed it up, different economic levels, etc. But they're like you, and you should talk to them. And I said, I can't go around calling people up and say, hello, you have a dead husband and I have a dead husband, we should have a conversation. They'll think I'm insane. So then that's true. So he said, no, I'll contact them, and if they want to talk to you, would you speak with them? And I said, sure. I have nothing to do. I didn't have a process. They told me I had a process. They told me to write this. I said, okay, I wasn't going to write it. And now I've got somebody finding 2 people for me. So as I told people that I was going to speak to these 2 women who happen to live somewhat in our community, or at least in the Miami area, one said to me, oh, I know somebody, and someone else said to me, you know, you don't have an African-American woman. And I said, I didn't know I was supposed to. You know, so she said, I'm going to get you an African-American. I said, good for you. But you got to contact her because I can't go around calling people. And another one said, well, I live in Miami. You know, you should be speaking to an Hispanic woman. And I said, okay, find me one and I'll be glad to. And they did. And then I was in Portugal with my friends from Portugal, whom I felt very safe traveling with. And I had like 8 pages that I had sketched out. And I said, take a look at this. And she did. And she said, you know, Arlene, my cousin, born in Portugal, who lives in France, she had young children. You don't have anybody who's young. I said, okay. But because I was in Europe with her in Portugal, we were on the same time zone as the woman. So now we could talk in the beginning, and now I'm interviewing somebody over the pond. Then I have a friend who's Asian, whom I work with, and she said, you don't have an Asian woman. I said, okay. So she finds me a lovely woman. She was my first octogenarian from Japan. And someone else said to me something else, and someone else said to me, you know, you don't have a woman who's gay. I have a friend who's gay who lost her wife. And I said, talk to her. Only to be topped off by what I was saying to you by one friend of mine who said, you know, you don't have anybody who lost 2 husbands. I said, I think this is getting very weird. And sure enough, she lost, like what you were talking about, 1 husband, Angela. And then she met somebody, maybe about 2 years later. And then he just stopped. So I said, this is really bizarre. Anyway, it ended up being 13 women of ages from like 32 to 82, from different countries, from different cultures, but they're in this book. So I wanted to share that with you because I didn't do this. They came to me. The whole concept came to me. I didn't do it, but I'm very fortunate about that. What I would like to do is tell you about a couple of choices I made, because now there's no one, I mean, you have children sometimes, you have best friends sometimes that you can talk to, but when you all of a sudden have had a partner of whatever, and you have nobody to ask, all of a sudden you're making choices instantly. And now, I'm not a dog person, but I will tell you there's a section on here, and a number of the widows said, well, the dog wasn't mine, it was my husband's, but within 8 hours I had to get the dog and walk the dog and feed the dog and the dog. And so the dog served a big function for them. But here was what happened to me. The first year, I made 3 choices instantly, and there was no thought process involved. It just happened. And the first choice was wearing black that whole first year. Also, no listening, no music, and also no dancing. I'm going to read you this little section, wearing black. Wearing black is a traditional expression of mourning in many cultures, including our own, although American widows today tend not to adhere to such rigorous customs. I decided this discipline suited me, and immediately moved the rest of my clothes out of my closet. For 1 year, I'd focus my energies on getting through each day and maintaining emotional stability, not on what I needed to wear. What I soon discovered was that this choice not only freed me from issues of fashion, appearance, impressions, it also set me on a path of simplicity. It became easier to move through the day and, at the day's end, drop my simple clothes into the laundry basket, take a hot shower, and climb into bed. When the next day arrived, simplicity prevailed once more. Year 1 went by in this fashion, or lack of it. No music. Whatever era we came of age in my case it was the 60s, we all remember beloved music and lyrics of the day. What's more, throughout the course of a long relationship, certain songs accrue special meaning. Music has a way of evoking memories, moments, and firsts, as nothing else can, and producing what's known as a frisson, a kind of shiver, like an electric current goes through you when you hear that song. I know that getting through all of the milestones of year 1, birthdays, anniversaries, and such, would be difficult. I decided it might be easier to weather these occasions without the additional associations and feelings called up by the music that had become meaningful to Howard and to me. One of these was Yes, I'm Ready by Barbara Mason. Another one was My Cup Runneth Over by Ed Ames. And you add to those the romantic strains of Johnny Mathis and Roberta Flack and the rest of the romantic slow dance music of those years. Also operatic arias and Broadway show tunes. Even Hallmark commercial jingles could set off a flood of feelings in me. So I made a conscious effort to avoid this stimulus during year 1, knowing that eventually these songs would provide comfort rather than sheer pain. No dancing. Remembering the shared feelings, the closeness, the touch can be overwhelming. I had often described life with Howard as a dance. So when that dance ended, it made sense for me to take a break from literal dancing. Again, this left me more able to focus on what I needed to accomplish. It also offered me an excuse for declining invitations and gatherings, which spared me the experience of sitting at a table while the music and other couples spun around me. Not attending parties was a beneficial result of my moratorium on music and dancing. My choices fit together, and they fit me. Beautiful. Now, I will tell you that other things that they're like choices, but they're firsts. First things that happen that you have to put one foot in front of the other if you want to, because it's a choice. So one I'm going to tell you is although I should read you this. I don't know if you know offhand who Sheryl Sandberg is, who was the CEO after Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. Well, she lost her husband also very young. And she wrote a book called Option B. So I'm going to read you these few sentences because they're terrific. Sheryl Sandberg shares that just weeks after losing her husband, Dave, she was talking to a friend about a father-child activity. She had found someone to fill in for her husband so her child could attend the event. "But I want Dave," she cried. And her friend put his arm around her and said, "Option A is not available. So let's just kick the shit out of option B." And that's really how you feel. So what I'm going to speak about is the first guests I had for dinner, because we had always had company. Sometimes it was another couple, sometimes it was two couples, sometimes it was 8 people, sometimes it was big gatherings. I have before anybody knew what an open plan was in a house, I have an open plan. So it was great for gatherings. So I said, okay, I'm going to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to invite 2 couples but not together. I'm going to invite one couple, then another couple. And I'm going to invite them for a practice dinner. And the 2 couples, one was my friend Gail and her husband Jim, and the other was my friends from Portugal, Luis and Anna. They were very kind people. I knew if I had to say go home after salad, they just go home. I wasn't worried. So I knew these were practice dinners. I invited them as a practice dinner. I knew I could screw up, but I had to try. So Gail and Jim come the first time, and I'm making the same dinner, by the way. One week, 2 weeks later, I had the other one. Same thing. I figured if something worked, it worked. So I'm serving salad, French bread first, and then shrimp, because you could saute shrimp for like 2 minutes, and rice in a rice cooker, right? And I set my little table. I have a little wood table right near my kitchen. And I set the table. I put out the silverware. Well, we know about me with silverware. And so I put everything out. It looks nice. And they came and we chit-chatted for 5 minutes. And then I said, okay, we're going to sit down. We're going to have practice dinner. So they have their salad, which means we have 3 plates. I have my plate. There's nobody next to me. And they're sitting opposite me. And my friend Gail takes her plate and her husband's plate. And we bring it, when we finish the salad, to the sink. And I figured, I'm doing fine. I picked up my plate, my silverware, and she picks up the plates. And so we're at the sink, putting the plates in. And I go, how am I doing, Gail? And she's like, you're doing great, Arlene. It would be good, though, if you gave us back the silverware for the rest of the meal. When I took mine, I took all of the silverware off the table. All of the silverware off the table. Okay, I guess I will. So, of course, I put out some forks and knives. I have no idea what I did. But I already said, okay, you screwed up, but the shrimp were okay. The rice was okay. Fine. I'm good. And they understood. And Gail brought dessert. And really, what do you remember out of a meal? If it's good dessert, nobody cares. So she said. So that was the end. It was a practice dinner. I failed. Okay, stole everybody's silver. 2 weeks later, my friends Anna and Luis come. And now I'm not touching the silverware. I don't care if they have dirty silverware. I'm not touching it. So they have salad, and the French bread is out. I have some croissants on the side. We eat. I pick up my plate. Anna picks up those 2. I said, you know what? I have the dinner plates. It's like 3 feet to the kitchen. I said, why don't we just plate it up here, so that I don't have to bring everything to the table? And she said, great. Okay, I figured everybody has silverware. It's a success. And we go and we take the plates, and I put shrimp all over each plate. Nice light butter sauce, very nice. We go over to the rice cooker, and I'm going to spoon it out. And I open the rice cooker, and there is a rock-solid ball.
Oh, my God.
Like a hard ball in baseball. And what had happened was, of course, I didn't put any broth or water in, so the rice cooked and it became friends with the other rice. It's like this. And you could throw it on the floor, you could bang it, it wasn't moving. So Anna sees what's happening, and she's lovely. She said, you know, Arlene, don't worry about the rice. We have the shrimp, you have the French bread, we got plenty left. Thank God they sell you a long thing of French bread, so it's extra French bread. She said, well, take the French bread, we'll cut the rest, we'll dip it in, we'll be fine. I said, no problem. Of course, I'm ready to throw up. I'm so upset. But we had the French bread, lots of French bread. We had the shrimp, and of course, Anna, like Gail, had brought dessert. And she makes great chocolate mousse, so thank God. So everybody was happy. Well, obviously, I failed a little bit at both practice dinners, but several months later, maybe 6 or 8, I called them both up. I said, okay, I'm inviting you to a real dinner. And I did, and they went fine. But it wasn't so pretty. But that was my first attempt to have people in my house. And don't forget, this is at least 6 or 7 years, 6 years after my husband died. It wasn't like I did this, No, if I said I'm fixing the house year 1 and I'm doing that, I can only do one thing. I don't even believe in multitasking. I think multitasking just doesn't exist. You just do everything faster. I don't even believe in it. So in any case, that's the multitasking. So I'm now going to read you what happens when you have your first laugh. People don't realize that it could be years without a laugh. And there's a nice quote. It says, at the height of laughter, the universe is flung into a kaleidoscope of new possibilities. 3 years after Howard died, my friend Bud was planning a trip to Barcelona with a couple and invited me to join them. I said I'd think about it, hung up my phone, looked in the mirror and said, I don't think so. They were leaving in 2 weeks. How could I possibly go? When I mentioned the invitation to my daughter, she didn't hesitate. She said, just go. Get on that airplane and go. You can afford a ticket, Bud will take care of you, and you might have a good time. At the worst scenario, if you don't, you can get on a plane and go home. I had never even met this other couple, but I trusted Bud. And as you know, once you read the book, I think trust is the key to moving forward. It's probably the key to everything, but it's the key to moving forward. After a bit more thought, I embraced the idea and I said yes, because I paid for a ticket that I could get home and change, because I never thought I'd make it. As it worked out, I had to travel to Spain and back alone. I found my way to the hotel without incident and was welcomed by warm and wonderful people. What I'd never expected, and I mean never, was that I'd experience a major first on Sunday, December 18th in 2016. Having arrived, walking with my old friend and my new ones through a torrential rainstorm, just like what we have in Florida, walking through the torrents. And we were going to a restaurant called Seven Portas. We took one look at each other, at our bedraggled, soggy selves, and started laughing. My companions laughed, and I laughed right along with them. This was one of those exuberant, overpowering belly laughs, the kind I had not experienced in 3 years. We dried off as best we could, sat and ordered food, laughing the whole time. We couldn't stop. I continued to laugh with the others until happy tears started rolling down my cheeks, and my head actually almost hit the table. I had not laughed, really laughed, in 3 years, but that night the spell was broken, because I tried it first, and it was not easy. But I did it. So let me read you one quote that I like very much. It says, I love you, but I will not sit here and wait for this story to change. I am going to make it change. And that's by Erin Morgenstern, a great writer. And basically, I want to discuss part of the process in getting through the journey is you develop concepts. So certain things are choices, certain things are firsts, and certain things are concepts. And one of the concepts I decided was important to me, and it came to me, I didn't plan it, was becoming almost happy. 5 years after Howard's death, I began to feel happiness again, within limits. I guess you could say I was almost happy. The return of joy surprised me, but I knew it was real. At times, I'd catch myself singing or whistling around the house, but then something would remind me of Howard and I'd fall back into sad reverie. I came to understand that being almost happy was a balancing act that would probably continue for a very long time. I decided that being almost happy might be good enough. It really wasn't so bad to dwell in a peaceful state, where I was fully able to enjoy a moment, a day, an experience. So what if challenges loomed on the horizon? That is part of moving through the world, something I am proud to be able to do. Another concept is, and it's hard for people to understand that, some people no longer fit. And there's a good quote here too. At some point, by someone called Sandy Lynn, at some point you have to realize that some people can stay in your heart, but not in your life. This may be hard to fathom when you have just experienced a loss, but you may not need all the friends you can get. What I am trying to say is that your life just changed profoundly, and there may be some perfectly lovely people and some not so lovely people who no longer fit in it. It is not their fault. It is not your fault. As your needs change, as you change, there will be some loss. The first people to let go of, and I will tell you, every one of the 13 women said the same thing to me. First people to let go of are those who are negative by their very nature. When you had a partner, perhaps this negativity didn't affect you so much. Perhaps you didn't even notice it. We tend to be more tolerant of our friends' quirks when we have a partner to lean on. But after losing a loss as profound as a spouse's death, we are already fighting against the clouds that surround us. The last thing we need is someone bringing more bad weather into our lives. And I'm going to read you a sentence or two from one of the women who just had the best phrase, and I was only jealous that I didn't think of it, but she said it. I have to give her credit. Nettie also advocated for the elimination of negativity. I have no time for drama, she explained. I think of negative people, ready, as energy vampires.
Yeah.
I think that's just so great. Who can suck you dry. And don't get me started on trying to fix them. That just isn't possible. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and get yourself some new friends who provide what you need, some measure of peace. But I gotta tell you, I think energy vampires is just the best thing ever. And what there's so many things I could share, but basically I just wanted to share those few things with you and my stories. So I'm going to end with what it's like, what widowhood as a generalization is. While widowhood isn't one experience, there are many things about it that do seem constant. I have shared with you many of the fears, concerns, problems, logistics, and situations I have faced along my own path, and have gone on to interview others about the same matters. Should I stay in my marital home? Will I ever feel like seeking a new partner? Why don't people understand that I don't want to join the party, and maybe I never will? Although the answers to these questions are as unique as the women with whom I spoke, I've discovered that we in the Widows Club, and there are a number of women who don't want to be called widows, they don't like that term, but that's what we are. They feel the same way about a lot of things, and that in itself is extremely comforting. I'm not alone in my experience. I'm not the first to feel these feelings, and neither are any of you. If there's a theme running through this book, it is that of moving forward, hour by hour, day by day, year by year. My journey is one illustration of how this might look, and each of the other women that I've talked about has painted her own picture, sharing her own processes, time frames, mistakes, triumphs, and wisdom. And I'm going to end with that because I just wanted to share some points that I thought would be helpful when you're dealing with friends of yours. And I can tell you that almost every one of my friends, who of course buy your book right away because they're your friends and they love you, but they've given their book to someone else or bought the book for somebody else. One of my girlfriends called me up and she said, I'm running out of money. I keep buying books for people who So it's a remarkable thing. It is a remarkable thing. So basically, thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you. It makes me feel good that you came out tonight in the rain, with the parking, coming far and near. Thank you, thank you. Anything I can tell you or answer for you or do for you, or I've spoken, you've heard me. You all okay?
So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that the age range in the women that you
Yes.
have interviewed. So the youngest one was
32 with little children.
Wow.
So my best friend who lost her husband, she lost him when she was 29. So she's very
Right.
young, and they didn't have children. So did you find anything from the experience of that woman different dramatically
Yes.
than maybe other women.
She said something, and someone else also who had the woman from France. By the time I had interviewed her, it was like a decade later. But she said, and the woman from France also had young children, and I never thought of it, but really young, not infants, but 3 and 5, 6 and 7. And I think even the woman from Jamaica, they were a little older, they were 7 and 9. But the real little ones, the women, exactly what you're asking, they said to me, what Arlene, didn't know, and how would I know this, is that when you have little children, it's 3 of you going through this at the same time. It's not just that you have to be strong for them, it's that the 3 of you are burying somebody at the same time. There's no leaving one here, or those of you, hopefully not, who've lost spouses, the kids come and help you, and then they go home, or they have older children, they have to go back to college, or they're in high school and they're going to get a dance. But when they're little, it's the 3 of you, because both had 2 children, that's what I'm saying, going through this together. And I never even thought about that. And you just never know. So an example of one of these women, the 3rd one I interviewed, she was a painter. And she was painting, like Michelangelo, the Sistine. Well, she's painting in some big hall in Fort Lauderdale. She's a Miami person. She's painting, and she gets a call from her husband, whose name was John, his friend. And his friend says, you got to come home. John had an accident. And he's a pilot. And she said, John had an accident. So if he's in a hospital, tell me where he is. He said, no, just come home. He had a home. He's home. So she said, okay. So she's in Fort Lauderdale. She stops painting the ceiling. She gets in a car. She drives home. And as she's turning down her street, where her house is, because the guy said, come home, she's turning down the street, and she sees the front of her house, and she sees the TV cameras, and she sees the reporters, because he's a pilot, so it obviously was an airplane crash. So as she's driving in, she realizes her husband had an airplane crash, because why would there be reporters? So, there are all kinds of stories. This is somebody who, just went, and went to work one day and never came back. Some of us had sick people, so there's all different, but with little children is one thing, older children is another. It's just very strange. But yet there were things that were all in common. Out of the 13, 11 stayed in their home. Now, it could be it's a tainted, and we call this in universities a tainted study, because people were recommending people to me who had moved forward or who weren't stuck in grief. They were grieving, some of them, but they weren't stuck in it. So it might be that these were people who had moved forward, and so 11 of the 13 hadn't left. Now, they may have in the last few years, but they hadn't left their home. And the 2 who did it for financial reasons, and that's a different ballgame. It's a financial reason, you get that way. You don't put yourself through that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You came all the way up the steps, so you ask whatever you want.
I'm just curious. Have you had any signs from your husband? Because I have.
No signs. My husband just hasn't gone. He's right here. He's actually sitting here. No, we don't have signs. He's just here. So if you think that sounds crazy, it's not a ghost. I know he's not a ghost, but he's always here. It's funny. There's a thing called, some people, and this is just Arlene Sacks. This isn't, well, it is published matter now. So, but there is such a thing as being alone, or being lonely, or being by yourself. Now, I believe I am never alone. I believe Howard is always here. I just don't want anybody to come in white coats and take me away. So I am there. I know, I'm looking, I can tell. So I am never alone. And for some reason, I am never lonely. I don't know why I'm not. but I'm very aware that I am by myself. I recognize that I am by myself, and I have very good children, and they were wonderful, and my daughter's, you know, a hero. But I am by myself because I do everything by myself. They're conscious efforts. There's a very good book though called Signs. I did read that, and there's a couple in there that I go, ooh, but it's bad enough I have to say he's here. I can't go down that road. It's a very good book. So.
Okay, thank you.
Pardon me?
That's interesting.
I
yeah.
know, because I understand when people say they're lonely. I understand
Right.
that, but I don't experience that. But I understand being by myself, and making all these choices. So I have some funny stories in here that may not be funny to other people, but I think they're funny. And that's that. And these women, to me, I didn't read you about this, but to me, they're my heroes. Because to open yourself and have conversations with a perfect stranger and to share what they shared immediately is remarkable. Anything else? If that's all, have a wonderful evening, and thank you for spending it with me and my 13 buddies here.
Thank you.